Hello and welcome to the MMQB Monday Morning NFL Podcast. I'm Gary Bramley.
I'm Jenny Brentis.
I'm Connor Orr.
And guys, what a day of kickers it was. Culminating with that Mason Crosby game winner from 51 yards on Sunday Night Football. And we are starting there in Santa Clara with the Packers back and forth win over the 49ers. And I don't know, I guess we'll start with a bit of a quarterback comparison and I guess just what Aaron Rodgers was able to do over the course of a game where there were times where they were really scraping and scrapping for what they got, but the big plays they needed, they got early on, and the throw he made over Fred Warner on the final drive when it was kind of like, Warner didn't get quite enough depth there. It's kind of like, well, yeah, I guess it's sort of on Warner, but also there's probably like 2 or 3 humans on the planet who could even come close to making that throw with the necessary touch that far downfield, and that's just Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and they went to the middle of the field twice, which was a bit of a risk, but also where the opening was for them to make a big play. And Aaron Rodgers had 37 seconds, just needs to get into field goal range. They did, basically every second they needed to do that. And I don't know how many quarterbacks would have been able to maneuver that quickly with 2 throws and being able to get back to the line, spike it with 3 seconds to go.
It's such an incredible thing that we don't think about often, but it's like the little things that having a quarterback around for that long give you. And when other teams are in a 2-minute drill at the end of a game, it's such chaos and it's such sort of disorganization. And there are so few teams with that institutional togetherness that, it just seems so formulaic and comfortable for them, even down to the quick huddle that you need to spike it. I thought it was fascinating that, there's 10 seconds and Aaron Rodgers is getting everyone to the line. And there was still a moment where he could sit there and chill for a second before he snapped the ball and spiked it. And it's like, how many other quarterbacks in the league can do this all so artfully and seamlessly? And I don't know, that was fun to watch, just because when you watch a day of chaotic football and then you see that, it really does sort of juxtapose that for you.
Yeah, and he did that fist pump right after he spiked it with 3 seconds to go. He knew he nailed that drive. You couldn't have done it any better. But yeah, that's exactly right, Connor. And I think that's what Gary was getting to with his initial question, is the juxtaposition of any quarterback or most quarterbacks to Rodgers. And tonight it was Jimmy Garoppolo to Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, there's just such an ease to everything that Rodgers ends up getting in these types of games. And even, we'll talk about the Chargers win later, but the Chargers had 2 more illegal motion penalties where they just couldn't get lined up correctly on a key play. And that's, there are a million things that can go wrong on these things. And it just comes a little bit easier to the Packers. On the other side of it, look, Jimmy Garoppolo had, he lived a couple lifetimes in this one. He had some fun highlights and some fun lowlights along the way, and they end up taking a 1-point lead late in this game behind a Garoppolo drive, but it's just everything the 49ers have to do to get the ball moving with Garoppolo under center, it feels like they are putting forth, 400% more effort and energy to get that done than the Packers are on the other side.
And it makes you wonder how much longer they're going to stick with this current iteration of the offense. And if they continue to do so, does that suggest that Trey Lance isn't quite ready yet and that this still really is their best option? Because I would imagine that Kyle Shanahan is not keeping a better player on the bench at this point. And I think that the moment that he thinks that Trey Lance is good enough, they're probably going to pivot in that direction and try to get what they can for Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that the broadcast crew the last few weeks doing their games has been working overtime to try to sell this magical relationship and everybody understands what's going on here. I mean, I think this is strictly a business transaction and he's being used until he no longer needs to be used. It's like the what was it in Any Given Sunday when Dennis Quaid's character is throwing the ball and that song was playing, and it was like, keep on using me till you use me up. Dun, dun, na, 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 na. That's kind of like how I feel about Jimmy Garoppolo.
I mean, it's been a very sunny portrayal of the situation. And the reality is, generally, when there are quarterback transitions or someone's being groomed behind someone else, like, it's always rocky. And everybody involved, it's very rare that everybody involved knows what's going on, because not even the decision makers know how this is going to play out necessarily. So I think there has been a inaccurately sunny depiction of this. I mean, and you can even see the amount of resources that the 49ers are devoting to getting Lance ready. He stands next to Rich Scangarello, the quarterback's coach, during the game, flipping open his wristband, and they're talking to each other. Now, okay, Kyle Shanahan's calling the plays, and maybe that's a good thing for a quarterback's coach to be doing, but that's a lot of resources devoted to, like, walking the rookie quarterback through every play to make sure he's ready when his time comes. So clearly that devotion of resources indicates what path the 49ers are on, let alone all the draft capital they gave up to go up to get him.
Here's a field guide for the people at home on when you're being fooled during a broadcast or when you're being led to believe something. When someone like Al Michaels says something snarky at the end of a broadcast, like, yeah, you thought it was crazy in San Francisco? Get real. Everybody loves each other. Like, that is the time when your antenna should go up and say, oh shit, I think that something's going on here. Like, because like all week, these guys meet with the coaches and the team and the PR people, and they're just drilling this into their heads that everything is fine. We want everybody to think that everything is fine so that when you watch the broadcast, you think that everything is fine. When in reality, this guy's going to be replaced and traded. Like, let's just live on planet Earth where this stuff happens every single day. I don't know why we're denying ourselves that, just a slice of human reality here.
Well, I thought the defenses played well in this one, too, guys. If we could just stop yelling about Al Michaels for a moment.
It wasn't just you, Al.
And the secret messages he's transmitting to the Orr household. No, you have a very good point, Connor. That is what goes on. But, look, I thought the defense played admirably. We know the Packers have struggled to hold back this 49ers run game against Kyle Shanahan over the years. Joe Barry did a nice job with it tonight. D'Amico Ryans, I don't know. I get a kick out of it because it's such a thin line. If Emmanuel Mosley or a Josh Norman gets beat one or two more times, then he's the guy who blew it by blitzing so constantly. But he trusts those guys on the outside, and at the time when Emmanuel Mosley got that pass defense against Devante Adams to force the field goal late for the Packers, I mean, that was a big moment where he's trusting a guy who not many people would trust to cover Devante Adams one-on-one on a key third down.
Yeah, they had a couple big stops late, but then the Packers get the ball back and Rodgers makes two incredible passes. That's really what the game came down to at the end.
Makes you wonder what they were, letting him hold out for so long. He can do this stuff, so you just got to give him everything he wants. Come on.
Very little Jordan Love on this telecast tonight.
Yeah.
So,
what did Al Michaels say about Jordan Love, Gary?
So we should mention the officiating was a little bit dicey tonight. There were a couple of phantom calls that went in the 49ers' favor against the Packers. So maybe this was karma also teaming up with Aaron Rodgers to finish this one. But there was also a really uncomfortable moment where it's always uncomfortable when you get a vicious helmet-to-helmet hit. It was not necessarily intentional, but it's just how that play transpired with Jamie Ward coming across to try and break up a pass downfield to Devante Adams. But Adams was out on the field and was taken to the tent and suddenly was back in the game without a whole lot of, well, certainly no explanation, which you don't always get, but not a whole lot of time between these things happening.
Yeah, so he got hit on the first down play. He missed the second down play. Rodgers took a timeout before the third down play, and then he was in on the third down play. So he really missed one down. Don't know the exact time that he missed, but it's very fast to go through the evaluation process. He went into the blue tent, which indicates he was undergoing the sideline concussion testing, right? Which, okay, I'm just looking at the list of the things you have to go through. A review of the no-go criteria like loss of consciousness, gross motor instability, confusion, amnesia. If you have any of those, you go back to the locker room. Talk about what happened on the play. Review of concussion signs and symptoms. They ask Maddox questions, which are like, what quarter is it? Who had the ball last, etc. Video review of the injury, and a neurological exam, including cervical spine examination, evaluation of speech, observations of gait and eye movements, and pupillary exam. So that's a lot to go through, basically in one down and one timeout. And it was clearly a bad hit because the NBC cameras, almost uncomfortably so, zoomed in on Devante Adams' face afterwards. So I think that's why it registered a little bit more, because look, it's hard to tell from the TV broadcast, and we're not there. We're not in the medical tent. But zooming in on his face, it looked like a player who was disoriented or confused, or it just looked like a troubling hit based on only what we could see from the TV cameras.
And unless they have like a Formula One style pit crew in there, each individually doing some of these tests, like, are you really banging that out in like 45 seconds? That seems like an awful lot. And wouldn't you want to take the time to ensure that you're going through the protocol, especially after something like that? I don't know. I mean, and then to have, I know we give it to Chris Collinsworth a little bit, and we've been very broadcast critical already in the first 10 minutes of this broadcast. But he was just like, "Yeah, there's Devante Adams. He's fine." And then I was just like, when did we get to fine? How do we know fine? Like, fine seems like a leap right now.
That's it. Collinsworth makes the call when it's all said and done. Phone on down, send him in.
Put him back in the game. I want to talk about it.
All right. We got lots more coming up in this show. It was a real wild day of football, guys. This is going to be a lot of fun. All right, guys. So we had Tom Brady go out to L.A. for the first time. Bucs riding a 10-game win streak, and now that is all over. The Rams are kings of the NFC now. Everybody agrees on it, I guess, is fine. But this was more Matthew Stafford looking like he is, exactly what the Rams went and got. And on top of that, a little bit of sweet revenge for Raheem Morris in this one with a Rams defense that looks like maybe it's not sliding back that much.
Yeah, and this is one of those games that could have implications for seeding in the playoffs, but because it happens in September, that just seems so far away. So for now, the immediate takeaways seem to be, yes, the Rams with Stafford are as good as they hoped they would be. And on the other side, the injuries in the secondary that have started with the Bucs week one, that targeted, an already thin secondary, probably their thinnest unit, really showed up in this game as well.
That's the thing, right? You have to be at a certain level to be able to expose the Buccaneers defense. And I don't think too many teams will be able to do it with such ease as the Rams were able to do it. That said, when you put something like that on film, I do think it's difficult for Tampa Bay to then now move forward and try to defend, because they're going to see the same stuff again over and over again. Now that the Rams have put it on tape, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward. But they absolutely need to do something, right? And I don't know what you do at this point. If you're Tampa Bay, you're sort of in a no man's land. There's not really an obvious free agent. I mean, Tom Brady at this point would probably get Charles Woodson to come out of retirement, or Champ Bailey, or another one of his aging friends, and they would play phenomenally well. But I don't know what the other option is for them right now.
Ty Law, come on down to Tampa Bay.
There you go.
Why not?
There you go. Yeah, so they were already without Sean Murphy-Bunting, and they lost Jamel Dean in this one. So they are getting thin at that cornerbacking spot. I don't know. I guess when you kind of step back, you're not going to play Matthew Stafford every week. You can probably get by with what your pass rush is and the fact that no one's going to run on you. And then it's just a matter of, is this offense going to be, basically the offense we saw Super Bowl week 1, week 2, or does it look a little more like the uneven play we saw in LA there? And that's one, because the Rams defense played really well. And two, the Bucs are a little bit shorthanded. No Antonio Brown in this one because of COVID protocols. They lost Rob Gronkowski briefly on a just rib-shattering, exploding hit by Terrell Lewis, completely clean, and not even really a hospital ball either. Terrell Lewis just exploded into him with a shoulder into his midsection, and I don't know. There was something very metaphorical about that hit. It was just like the Bucs had been, physically just literally beat up at that point.
Ironic, though, right, that especially Tom Brady, went out on he had one of those viral clips this offseason about, and it wasn't really a hospital ball, but avoiding balls that put players in those positions. And that was a big thing of his this offseason. And it was sort of ironic to see that happen to a receiver that he knows better than any other wide receiver in the NFL. But it's so hard to have any kind of definitive take on this, because the Buccaneers, probably next to the Rams, are the most complete team in the NFL. And so you saw two of the most complete teams in the NFL playing each other. And, these things are going to happen. Tampa Bay could win their next 5 games and it wouldn't really change my opinion of them at this point as one of the best teams in the NFL. But for our readers, so we take turns doing the power rankings every week, right, on SI.com. And in the past, when it was a team effort, our editor, Mitch Goldich, would change a lot of my picks because he deemed them too hot for the website. But when I got to take over last week, I did the week 1 power rankings, and I put the Rams at number 1, and I think that they deserve to stay there. So I would say that Tampa Bay is probably the second best team in the NFL, maybe the third best team in the NFL, but the Rams remain the best team in the NFL.
Connor, a true oracle. And to get back to the point Gary made at the top of this section, the Rams defense was fantastic, and I think that was something this year. Would they take a step back after losing Brandon Staley? So a performance like this, the way they played against the Buccaneers, really assuaged some of those potential concerns.
All in the court of a lot of owners, right? So everybody within proximity of Sean McVay gets hired. What do you do now that Raheem Morris comes, takes over the defense, and does a phenomenal job? Is it, I think it's at this point time to recognize that he's also pretty darn good at his job and was great at his job taking over for Dan Quinn in Atlanta last year. And I think a guy who could be a good second chance head coach at some point.
It's a very stat padding fourth quarter, by the way, if anyone's going to throw the box score at us. Rams really, I'm always putting up the defenses. It was really an excellent performance both sides of the ball for the Rams here, and I don't know, we've got some interesting races shaping up in the NFC and some even more interesting races shaping up in the AFC, where everything's just a little bit topsy-turvy. I think that is the phrase we go with here, as the Las Vegas Raiders 3-0. I don't know if anyone's had any Raiders takes on this show. I'd have to go back and listen to the archive, but Raiders, they played 3 games, they won all of them, and this one had look. No one's going to go wild over the teams they've beaten so far, even if the Steelers are going to bounce back and be a contender, as I claim they will. But this one had a bit of deja vu to it with what went on there last December with Ryan Fitzpatrick mounting the comeback win and knocking the Raiders out of playoff contention. This sort of went the same way with Jacoby Brissett keeping the Dolphins in it and the little comeback, and it goes to overtime, and the Raiders end up showing some resolve and hanging on here.
And speaking of deja vu, right, what did we talk about last week in that Steelers game was really kind of, I don't want to say uncharacteristically tough, but I think that toughness is starting to become this sort of narrative around Derek Carr this season, where he took some pretty violent hits last week against the Steelers, came back, stayed in the game, and made some big plays. And then early on, like, he was getting knocked around in this Dolphins game. They were getting after him, And then there was the interception and the pick six where it was clearly a miscommunication. I think the receiver stopped the route and then it ends up getting taken back. I don't want to overgeneralize anybody, but I do think that these were games in the past where maybe Derek Carr then starts to drift out to sea a little bit there, but he stayed dialed in. And part of the big reason that I think that they've remained in so many of these games, despite some other inconsistencies, is the fact that like he's still making big throws and he's still playing really good football.
Yeah, they fall into a 14-0 deficit, and they, not too long it takes for them to claw back out of that. And 2 games this season that were decided on the final play of the game. So to come out on top of games like that, I think is, like you said, maybe the teams that they're beating won't necessarily wow people, but at the same time, the way they're winning games should.
Yeah, I mean, they've won 2 overtime games now. They played a lot of football this year. They basically keep Brian Edwards in bubble wrap until overtime rolls around, and then they let him become, I don't know, modern-day Jerry Rice or however they do it. But look, they're wins. They're stacking wins here, and right now they're tied for first in what's a very good division with the team we all figured would run away with it, sitting at 1-2, and it's a good place to be right now, and let's see if they can steal a couple of games from some really good opponents as the year goes on and sneak into the postseason. I did want to mention the Dolphins real quick just because I am Jacoby Brissett's #1 fan, and I think that includes his immediate family at this point. But I was excited to see him back out there. I am intrigued to see what he does over the next couple of games with Tua Tagovailoa out. I don't think there's any doubt at this point. He was objectively superior to what they've gotten from Tagovailoa, even if Brissett is maybe not a guy you would go in there and be like, okay, we have our guy now or something like that. But you just got a basic level of competence as far as, operating from the pocket, throwing under pressure, being able to create outside of structure sometimes. I mean, that's kind of what you need in the NFL right now, and they just haven't had that in a year plus, and we'll see if Brissett can kind of keep this thing close and maybe make enough plays over the next couple of weeks to make this an interesting decision here for Miami.
Gary, you deserve credit for that take on Brissett. You've been championing him as recently as last week, and you said that you believed that his performance would be a cut above what Tua had given them. And that turned out to be the case in this game for sure. And perhaps he doesn't have this as high a ceiling as Tua does, but based on what Tua has shown so far, right now, he's the more competent replacement at the position.
And I do think really the sad part about the Brian Flores era is like, he's such a good coach, and I think that he's such a good defensive mind. But then you miss on the quarterback, which is who knows who was standing on the table of the room and making the decisions, and then you whiff on your offensive coordinators, which I think has been another sort of big tragedy in this. I mean, literally, the Dolphins coaches are calling a sort of lateral pass in the end zone in this game. Like, what is the one thing that you would never do? That was the first play this season that I've seen that caused like audible laughter when I saw it happen. You literally called a play where the quarterback turned and fired the ball like horizontally, still in the end zone with nobody blocking in front of him. What was the idea behind that?
Yeah, and then in overtime, the shovel pass on 3rd down. So then they ended up kicking the field goal. Now they had come out aggressive on 1st down, but then on 3rd down, they just essentially say, hey, we're just going to kick the field goal when the Raiders had been moving the ball well and there was a decent amount of time left. So that was a questionable decision as well.
I think the shovel pass in general needs to be earmarked. Like if you call a shovel pass, a coach needs to ask the offensive coordinator, he needs to pause the game and say, hold on. Are you Connor's dad? Like, are you somebody who watches football casually and that's like one of the 11 names of the plays that you know, and this is what you're going to do? Or do you have a better idea here? I know Jenny and I always like to talk about our dad's best football takes, and my dad loves a well-timed shovel pass, but this was I don't remember the last time I've seen a well-timed shovel pass that hasn't been run by Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Like, they're the only people who are allowed to run the shovel pass, and mostly it succeeds by virtue of it just being Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce.
in a way, the shovel pass is the most courageous play call you can possibly make
it's
because
amazing.
it's very low percentage, so you're probably going to get busted on for it. But if it works, it doesn't impress anyone. So,
yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I love the movie Clueless. There's a line in the movie Clueless where, the father says, take my daughter out and anything happens to her, I got a 45 and a shovel. I doubt anyone would miss you. And just really comes to mind in this conversation because if you didn't call the shovel pass, I doubt anyone would miss it.
Oh, it all comes back to Alicia Silverstone's greatest hits here.
See, now that was a well-executed movie reference. I've really shown a lot of growth during this podcast. Proud of myself.
It was. And I saw Clueless when I was much younger, but I already forgot everything in that movie. Paul Rudd was in it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
Stepbrother / love interest, as happens.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's creepy. Oh, I don't know.
Not selling me on this one.
Let's talk Chargers Chiefs here. This was a really fun game, and we'll get into what the Chargers did defensively to the Chiefs, which I don't think was particularly bold, but we've seen it 2 straight weeks now, and it seems like it's what we're going to see for probably the next 14 weeks here with the Chiefs. But what I like best about this game is, we know the trust that Andy Reid puts into Patrick Mahomes and what they put on his plate and how they allow him to sort of be Patrick Mahomes. And this season, you are seeing the Chargers doing that with Justin Herbert, whether it be a couple of fourth downs on the edge of field goal range, but they end up going for it on a 4th and 9 from about the 35. It was a windy day. They weren't quite confident in their kicker, considering he's not Michael Badgley. But they went for it, and they got it on the pass interference. And it's a team that's just letting their star quarterback be a star quarterback, and we'll maybe get into that with some of these other young quarterbacks in the league, but it's a refreshing approach at this point.
Yeah, and that's 2 weeks in a row in which a team was aggressive on 4th down, trusted in their quarterback, and beat the Chiefs. And I think in order to beat the Chiefs, even though, which we'll get to in a second, it hasn't been exactly what we expected out of the Chiefs yet this season, but you have to be that aggressive in order to beat a team that has the ability to score at will. And, even though with the decision they made, the Chiefs still got the ball back and had a chance, and, you could question that time management and that decision there. But they were aggressive at the moment when they had to be to win the game. And that's really what you need to beat the Chiefs and to challenge them in the AFC.
When Brandon Staley, I watch all of his post-game speeches, by the way. They're like appointment viewing for me at this point.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I think I have, I don't know what you call it, sort of like an early season infatuation with this person. But he says to the crowded room, a lot of the media is going to talk about me going for it on 4th down a lot. But it was the easiest decision in the world to make when I trust every single person in this room. And my heart just melted into a puddle of chocolate. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, how could you not love that? But it's interesting because I think if you're the Chiefs, you sort of miss the window on diversifying your offense enough. You're still brilliant, and a lot of the play calls that you run are still incredible, but you're not different enough than you were 3 years ago that by the time everybody drafted people and hired coaches and spent all this time figuring out how to stop you, they haven't figured out how to stop you, but they're in your area now. They're in it enough where they can beat you, and you can't just lap the field and then allow some of your mistakes to not come back and bite you.
I think that's an interesting assessment, Connor. I sort of have been looking at it as this unit hasn't quite gelled yet this season. They have an entirely new offensive line, and that takes live game action to break that unit in. And I think we're sort of seeing the consequences of that unit being new and still working things out with Mahomes. The idea of catching up to a scheme is true, but I think there are players that transcend that, and Mahomes is one of those players. So I'm interested to see how the unit develops when the line gets a little bit more used to playing together, and maybe some of the things that looked so effortless in the past become easier again.
Yeah, not surprisingly, Joey Bosa had his way with Lucas Niang on the right side of the line this game. It's not a great offensive line right now if you're going to continue to tick off excuses, as I will right now. Tyreek Hill, he just seemed to be a little bit limpy in this game. I don't know if he was necessarily slowed down, but it just seemed like after every play he was kind of like half limping back to the huddle. And on top of that, I mean, look, the Chargers did... basically very similarly to what the Ravens did a week ago, where they just played a ton of two deep safeties. They emphasized coverage, and they just sort of said, okay, our pass rush will maybe get to you, maybe not. We're not going to do the big play. We're going to make you drive down the field. They just, they gave up the rushing yards. They gave up. They just let Clyde Edwards-Helaire have a handful of just free sort of 6 or 7 yard carries, and that's the way they approach this thing. And the one thing that does is it lets you hang around. And if you have a Justin Herbert or you have a Lamar Jackson, you probably feel okay hanging around with the Chiefs and making it a one-possession game at the end and just trusting, like, maybe you get a bounce. Maybe Edwards-Helaire loses a fumble like you did last week. Maybe you get that rare Mahomes-Kelsey miscommunication, which led to the interception at the end of this game on the Chiefs sort of, it was a 3rd and long. They were probably going to have to punt anyway, but that swings those games when you can just stick around and play one-possession football. It's kind of like what the Bills did in the rain early last season it was one of those weird weeknight games. I want to say it was like Tuesday night or Wednesday night, one of those rescheduled games against or an afternoon. It was very weird whenever it was played. But, they took a similar tack, but they didn't make the plays. Josh Allen didn't make the plays in that game. They didn't get the turnover, and they lost. But if you take that tack, it's probably giving you a better chance to beat this team than going out there and like trying to go shot for shot with Patrick Mahomes and saying like we're going to attack and do our thing and just watching him, pick up these huge chunk plays.
Yeah, we've also seen more mistakes from the Chiefs early this season. I mean, the interception Mahomes threw last week, I think he said it was the worst interception he's ever thrown. We've seen Clyde Edwards-Helaire fumble the ball in back-to-back weeks. Also somewhat uncharacteristic for this team. So often those things even out, or maybe there's certain corrections they need to do in practice. But I'm not ready to issue a referendum on the Chiefs right now. But at the very least, this game was a huge win for the Chargers, for Herbert, for Brandon Staley to say, hey, this division's wide open and we are ready to make some noise.
It'll be fascinating to see, to both of your points, then, how does Vic Fangio play them twice a year now? Because you don't have Justin Herbert, right? You can't go shot for shot, but you can run almost the same defense that the Chargers are running. So what do you do with the blueprint when you don't have the offense to back it up? And is that ultimately the biggest compliment of the Chiefs, that you need to score with them in addition to playing this great defense to win these games? And so I think that will be something to look out for.
Connor, would you say that you're in full bloom love with Brandon Staley right now?
I would describe, the first I've been tracking who he gives his game balls to. I pay a lot of attention to that because the Chargers post that. People can't see this on the podcast, but Jenny gives me this look when it's like I know she's pinning me into something, or that I'm about to she set me up for something, and I got that look, so I'm nervous now. But
I was making a Gettleman joke, bringing it back to Danny Dimes.
But I do feel like he is. I do think he's. I would say I'm tickled. Let's put it that way. I'm tickled, and one of the things that I like about him the most is that his game ball distribution has been very even. And as somebody who has never received a game ball in my life, but has always sort of placed a lot of energy on disliking the people who received game balls that were in my proximity. I would say that he understands that. And so, like today, for example, Mike Williams got a game ball, obviously, because he played really well. But then the entire defense got a game ball, and Bosa was standing right behind him while he was giving the speech. And I said, I bet he's going to turn around and give it to Bosa, which everybody on defense will think, well, he doesn't really mean it for me then. He just means it for him. But no, he didn't do that. And so that was what really tickled me about the whole thing. I've gone way deeper into this than I think anybody should. But maybe it is full bloom love at this point. I don't know. Maybe it's the beginnings of that, I would say.
God, I can't wait till week 14 and he announces Connor Orr is getting the game ball. No, you're the one person watching these ceremonies. Hey,
who did a big MMQB? We did a big piece on Brandon Staley way back when nobody was talking about him. So there you go.
Yeah. We did. We're always ahead. All right, so some of these games, I don't know, they just fit too neatly into a narrative. Like, everyone just sort of plays their part the way they're supposed to play it. And that's kind of what you had in Ravens-Lions when it just seemed like such an unlikely upset was brewing. And it just fell apart in the end because Justin Tucker comes in and makes this superhuman kick that not only goes through from 66, but just in the most dramatic way, just banks off the crossbar and into the net. And I don't know. It's just kind of the way that had to end. It's kind of like this was something that's played out, infinite number of times over the entirety of the metaverse and all these different timelines, and it always has to end with the Lions losing in this kind of fashion in this kind of game.
It was so brutal for the fans in the end zone, too, because on the end zone view of the kick, you could see the ball bouncing. And then when it hits the crossbar, the Lions fans started cheering, but then they realized that it was bouncing up and through. And then all of the cheers just fell down. It was like they were physically deflating. It was actually very sad because I have to say this Lions team has played very hard through 3 weeks, and they have been a lot more competitive than they were in the Matt Patricia era, than anyone expected them to be. And to have a heartbreaking loss like this was just, you could just tell the toll that it was taking on the fans, and I'm sure even more so on the team.
I have a strange hot take about this that actually hit me while you were talking about the ball doinking on the crossbar in the end zone. I think it's almost unquestionable. It is way more fun to be a fan of a team like the Lions than it would be to be a fan of the Patriots or the Packers or a consistently successful franchise. And I don't think it's even close. I think that you go in every week, the tickets are probably more available. You go and a win is a stunning surprise. Mm-hmm. The one time in every 20 years that you're good is thrilling and special. And then you don't have to be a defensive, tool about your team all the time because they're bad. And so I think it's I don't know. I think it's great. I mean, I'm experiencing this a little bit secondhand growing up a Browns fan, and I'm not a fan of any team anymore. But I do think that some of that never leaves you. And I do feel sometimes I feel like acting like a defensive tool on behalf of the team just because that's how you grew up. But I would rather them have just been bad all the time because it's way more fun. You could be pre-2004 Bill Simmons and just make everything about you the whole time and talk about how much this affects you. And, it just seems like a much more enjoyable thing. And especially now with the Dan Campbell Lions where you're fiery, you're in all the games, but you still are you still lose in heartbreaking fashion. This is way better than being a Patriots fan right now and confronting your own mortality.
Yes. So I agree with that halfway. You have to have been bad for a long time. It doesn't work if you were pretty good or on the verge and then you roll back. And the Lions were maybe, they were creeping in that way when Jim Caldwell was there, and then they sort of blew the whole thing up. But yeah, it's not a bad spot to be in if you're a Lions fan. And look, it's good to feel something sometimes, even if it's heartbreak. You just got to know you're alive.
Yeah.
But
That's what I'm saying.
It's I still, Connor, you're a fellow Orioles fan, and we will delve into the Orioles portion of this podcast right now. But my favorite Orioles memory, because I was too young to remember their last World Series, I was alive for it though, but when they knocked the Red Sox out of the playoffs in game 162, Robert Andino had the walk-off hit against Jonathan Papelbon. That was amazing. That was incredible. It's such a good feeling to ruin someone else's season when you can't be successful on your own. I mean, that's a great spot to be in.
This episode is really helpful in my ongoing psychoanalysis of my two podcast co-hosts. Really revealing.
We're petty, jealous a-holes who just want to see our social betters fail and fall down. I think we're pretty clear on that. I wear that on my sleeve. But
couldn't have summed that up any better.
This was a rocky performance for the Ravens, obviously. Aaron Glenn did a nice job containing Lamar Jackson in this one. They were very disciplined in the rush lanes. It's also, look, the Lions are so shorthanded defensively, especially at cornerback, but this Ravens offense, as we say all the time, they just don't have the receivers to really take advantage of this. I mean, when the Lions go out and play teams that have, NFL caliber receivers, it's probably going to be ugly from here on in, but this is a good matchup for them.
I don't think if I'm basing what I thought the Lions season would look like versus what it is now, if I'm a Lions fan, I'm thrilled regardless. I mean, if you're 3-0 or 0-3, I think you're at least going in the right direction. You have the right coordinators. You have smart people on both sides of the ball. You have a coach that seems to be willing to run through a brick wall to get these guys to come and play. And what more could you ask for at this point? In this division with Aaron Rodgers and everything else, you're not going to win the division. You're rebuilding, but this is a fun rebuild. So and that was an incredible game. My only other note from that was the complete stunned silence on John Harbaugh's face when the kick went through. Like he was like walking straight to the middle of the field for a handshake, but like it was fun to see like a grown man still unable to like realize what had just happened. And I thought that was like pretty enjoyable.
I was wondering about that. Or do you think he was still surprised that they didn't call delay of game on the snap before?
Yeah.
As like a member of the competition committee and like a pretty good, pretty again, stickler for the rules.
Only the Lions. That could only happen to the Lions that way. They should have called the delay of game, pushed them out of field goal range, and then it would have been a Hail Mary or nothing. But it was just a lot of weird scenes at the end of it. It looked like Justin Tucker doing his sort of wild, victorious run around the field, which, I don't know, it was a weird scene. Weird scene after a weird game.
It really was.
All right, heading out to Cleveland where the Browns just completely smushed the Bears in Justin Fields' first career start. And look, Connor, you're a Browns guy. I did not think the Cleveland Browns looked particularly sharp offensively in this one, but defensively, this was a complete overwhelming of the Bears' offensive line up front, and it kind of raises the question, okay, Justin Fields didn't have a chance in this one. Would anyone have had a chance in this one? Or, was there maybe a better way to approach how they were going to attack this Browns defense here?
This game stunned me in terms of Matt Nagy in general. Like, I've never vacillated so much on my opinion of one person as a coach, back and forth as I do with Matt Nagy. Like sometimes I'm like, wow, he took Mitch Trubisky to the playoffs twice. He's a good coach. Wait until he gets a good player. But then in a game like this, it's like, how could you start Justin Fields? Because we talked about this last week. I think he got a lot of flack for saying that Andy Dalton was the starter, and I think we recognize our role as like a collective body of press in saying that like we were probably initially some of the people that rolled our eyes at this because Justin Fields is really talented, but there's a reason he did that, right? And because the offensive line can't block anybody, they can't sustain blocks, and they're going to get consistently beat off the edge. And so why wouldn't you have played Nick Foles? Like that to me should have been 1A, and 1B is if you're playing Justin Fields, why are you running the same offense? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me either. Like, why don't you accentuate some of the things that can get him out of the pocket and play on the pressure? Like, we've seen some coaches who design things assuming that people are going to jet up field and destroy your left tackles, and your right tackle. But then you punish them for that. So then you kind of put them on their heels a little bit.
Yeah, when Fields was forced into action last week, it seemed as though they didn't really have a game plan ready to go for him, which, okay, you weren't expecting to play him, although he's the backup quarterback and could enter the game at any minute. But now, having had a week to game plan, it was still surprising to see that the offense hadn't really changed that much, and they hadn't incorporated some of the concepts that might have allowed them to be functional even behind a leaky offensive line. I mean, I kind of go back and forth because we do want to be accountable to the fact that we were like, why is he sticking with Andy Dalton? Like, why is he sticking with this promise he made when they signed him, or whatever the case may be? But I think the issue here is, if you have Fields and he's going to play at some point this season, or you have to recognize the fact that he's a better quarterback than Andy Dalton. They wasted all of that time in the summer when they could have been preparing him. So now he's forced into duty because of an injury. And then he has, they don't seem to change the offense a lot. You're trying to prepare midstream. And I think I saw ESPN Next Gen Stats charted that he was pressured on 55% of the snaps. So the end result is the offense that, barely averaged 1 yard a play?
1.1.
Wow. Oh,
they had 47 net yards on 42 plays. They had 1 net passing yard, which is passing yards minus the yards you lose on sacks. So that's the kind of day it was. It's just, you look at this and you say, okay, take Justin Fields' physical traits, and there are answers there. And then the question becomes, do we want to sort of build a sort of a gimmicky offense and then try and sort of reprogram him as a different kind of passer as we go forward? Or do we just plug him in there like he's Andy Dalton and go forward? And they sort of chose option B here. I will say the one thing about Justin Fields and the sort of debate about his readiness coming into the year, the stuff they do at Ohio State doesn't necessarily translate to the NFL, although I would say they are NFL-like concepts. It's super heavy on option routes. It looks like a Kevin Gilbride offense or something. It looks like something out of like 2007 that they're doing there, and obviously they're just physically so much better than everyone they play against that you can sort of do whatever you want, and the offense looks like it works. And their offense works, but it's just, I don't think anyone was going to ask Justin Fields to do in the NFL what he did in college. So there's going to be some level of reprogramming necessary, but I don't know. This just felt like no solution. It felt like it wasn't good for the long term. It wasn't good for the short term. If you're going to do this, I don't know, dust off Nick Foles at this point? Is he still there as a third stringer?
He is. So 2 good points there made by Gary. Ohio State, a horrible school, football team, and then also they should have played Nick Foles. So I agree with you 100% on both of those accounts.
Let's give those guys a break for a little bit and head to Cincinnati for the AFC North leading Bengals beat the Steelers. I wasn't surprised by this, guys. I think the Steelers are really good, but I just think the Bengals have their number. No, this is very reminiscent of I think it was a Monday night game they played last year, late season, when the Bengals just sort of wrecked them. I mean, it was not a close game. It was a lopsided game, and I think Ryan Finley was the Bengals quarterback that day, and it didn't matter. And defensively, the Bengals were just better than the Steelers offensively. The one play that sticks out to me in this one, there are actually 2 plays. There's a 3rd and goal, sort of a mid-red zone there where Ben Roethlisberger, they're down 17. They can settle for a field goal here, but he threw short of the end zone, and it was kind of like, oh, that was a little bit half-hearted there. For a guy who's really been beat up today, you'd figure, can't get any worse. Let's just take a chance here, see what happens. But they got down to the end, and I believe Charles Davis was the color commentator of this game. But the Steelers had lined up. They had a 4th and goal. It was just outside the 10. They're down 2 touchdowns. There's about 3 minutes left. The Bengals put everyone up on the line of scrimmage. They had not done any sort of like aggressive blitzing in the red zone all game. They just kept on putting everyone in the end zone and waiting for Roethlisberger to throw short. And Charles Davis just sort of pointed out, they're showing blitz here, but I don't think they're coming. And I have to think Ben Roethlisberger thought the exact same thing. I think anyone watching the game thought the exact same thing, that they were just going to drop out. And they did, but Ben just decided to dump the ball off to Najee Harris like 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and then just sort of, maybe he was fooled, but it felt to me like he was just sort of feigning surprise that he had been fooled, when it just kind of felt like he just wanted to go home, wave the white flag, and not have to mount another drive at that point.
Interesting you brought this up, Gary, because momentarily there will be a column posted on the MMQB defending that play and what Ben Roethlisberger did. Yes. So I had a different take on Ben Roethlisberger's day. I thought that while anybody would be insane to pick the Steelers to be successful in any regard this season, they had... So ESPN Stats and Information, this is interesting. The most second half drops by any team since they've been charting the statistic since 2006. Najee Harris alone dropped 4 passes in the second half. But that was on that 4th down. Everybody was up on the line, and he correctly guessed that they would drop back, right? And when you drop back into a picket fence zone, which is what the Bengals did, they dropped the 4 guys back, kind of like what Jim Schwartz used to do a lot on 3rd downs, and they guard the first down marker. The play call, a lot of times the right play call there is some sort of like screen or something to bust it up. And I think the decision was actually sound, because what you wanted to do was get Najee Harris with a head of steam running at that picket fence coverage, and you wanted your offensive linemen to get off their blocks and to get ahead of him. That was the plan. It was executed horribly. Like, it went very wrong. But I agree with his point, which was what else? He said afterwards he wished that in hindsight he would have taken a shot, but he said it in a way that, like, I don't think I would have been able to do anything, right? Because so what is the higher percentage play there? Is to try to smash Najee Harris into a picket zone, or if you're Ben Roethlisberger, to like kind of waffle in the backfield slowly for a little while and then just missile 10 yards downfield. I don't know the answer to that, but typically against picket zone coverage, a screen is like the call. Like, that's what you would want to do. And so that was like a very poorly thought out, very poorly executed, like pseudo screen in that regard.
I'm going
to
give you the
side with Gary on this one, but I will read your column and give it a chance, Connor.
That was the summation of the column, and so if you don't agree with that, then you disagree with. Holy smokes, I'm 0 for 2. So because I basically summarized my Chiefs column earlier, and Jenny called it interesting, which is one of the most dangerous insults in her vocabulary, because she's a very kind and wonderful person. And then straight out disagree with this one. Like, I don't know. I better check my employment status on Monday morning. I'm very nervous about this.
Well, I will say this. The result today has sparked a lot of takes about, should we have been talking about Ben all along and the Steelers' decision to stick with him? And I think that's fair on some level, but I will also say they lost offensive linemen in this game, which certainly didn't help them on plays like the one we're just describing. And also, they were down both TJ Watt and Alex Hightower. This is after losing Bud Dupree in the offseason, and certainly their defense has looked a lot different with Watt out. So I think the last game and a half since Watt has been sidelined, they haven't had one of their biggest chances to win, which is one of the best defensive players in the NFL. So I think it's too early to be making definitive conclusions on the Steelers either way.
I agree.
Jenny, I want to ask you, because you did the great story on Tom Brady and Bruce Arians and the offense is coming together. Do you think that Ben Roethlisberger, who is a guy who at the very least can get rid of the ball exceptionally fast and is still a quarterback who can identify coverages and, do all the requisite things for a quarterback, is there a mind melding solution to this where they win? Can a Tom Brady like thing happen where a guy at the end of his physical rope can still be successful in Pittsburgh? That to me is kind of what the big question for them this season is.
Yeah, I just don't know that there can be that dramatic of a melding as there was in Tampa Bay, because Tom basically was like, these are all of the things that I did in New England, that I learned in New England. And a lot of them were surprised. I mean, I was surprised that wasn't already happening, like in every offense, like the idea that you run the same play out of different formations, or you run different formations or personnel groups to get to the same play. But I mean, I feel like Canada, since he was there last year as the quarterback's coach, has had time and, to understand what Ben likes and what Ben has historically done and try to introduce some of these new concepts to it. I think perhaps the question is the line good enough? Are the skill position players good enough? And is Ben, in whatever level of physical diminishment that he is, despite the fact that everyone focused on him coming back to camp in the best shape, he's clearly not the same physical threat that he was 10 years ago. So can you operate all of those things that you want to do when you don't have that, totally complete roster around him? And I think maybe we're not talking enough about the offensive line for the Steelers, that this was once their powerhouse, and it really has diminished from that as well.
Yeah, no Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, a little bit in and out of this one with seemed like some sort of nagging lower body injury. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think it's easier to rein in the sort of Bruce Arians, let's chuck it downfield type of offense into something more quick strike than to. I don't know what the next iteration of the Steelers offense is. I think they do need to take a few more shots downfield. I think they already have the horizontal stuff down. But I don't know. It's going to be a really interesting run to their AFC title this year, and we'll talk about it in January and February. Okay, we are on to the Saints going to Foxborough and beating the Patriots here. And I just want to start this by saying, so we have Bucs Patriots coming up next week. We're going to have a whole week of just, I don't know, we're going to be vomiting at the thought of the Brady Belichick conversations going into Saturday and Sunday and all that. But I think everyone kind of forgot what Brady in 2019 was on a Patriots team that wasn't great around him and kind of couldn't lift him up the same way that the Bucs supporting cast now does. And this kind of looked like it today with Mac Jones playing with this team against the Saints defense that, look, there haven't been many games over the past couple of years where the Patriots offensive line couldn't block someone. They just couldn't block the Saints today. And we know they're not necessarily dynamic on the outside and all that stuff in this offense, but they just couldn't block the Saints front four. Yeah, no,
I agree with you, Gary. I think Dennis Allen in general has been having a really good season. His game against Green Bay was one of the better defensive game plans that we've seen all year. And this was him just simply getting help from the scheme, getting not the scheme, but the players themselves, getting help from a rookie quarterback who looked a little overmatched at times, which is absolutely 100% going to happen with a rookie quarterback. And if you give a defense that good and that deep a little bit of leeway, and then you put the ball in the hands of Jameis Winston, who all of a sudden is a winning NFL quarterback, then that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I think to self-own myself, I think it was a little bit too far ahead in my projection that the Patriots could win the AFC East, although it is still very early in the season. But they went on a big free agency spree. We don't often see that working well. I thought perhaps the specific players they targeted could work in exactly what they were trying to do, but I think it might just take a little bit longer. There's times when players don't 100% seem on the same page. I thought Mac Jones had a good day, but I think to your point, Gary, there were just times when he couldn't do anything because the Saints front was just so overwhelming. And, the play was essentially over a half second after the ball was snapped.
All right, so we'll start this by saying good on Arthur Smith getting his first win as a head coach. The Falcons are on the board here in 2021. They go into East Rutherford and beat the Giants. But we need to talk about this Giants offense probably more than a little bit, and maybe we'll have to save some for later. But Daniel Jones has looked excellent the last 2 weeks, has looked really good, and it's almost like you're getting this, I don't know, like this sample platter of all the things he can do, and he looks impressive in doing a lot of these, but this offense is still just kind of, number one, they insist on trying to run the ball when they can't run the ball very successfully, and number two, it all just kind of feels like just sort of a mismatch. It's like you're making a meal, but you're just grabbing the most random things out of your refrigerator and throwing in a pot, and some of it tastes good, and some of it doesn't taste good. And it just, when you put them all together, they just don't really make sense.
I disagree with your food analogy, but I like where you're going. Here's the correct food analogy, because to describe Jason Garrett as somebody who's able to succeed, and what you're describing is basically the Chopped Kitchen, right, on Food Network, where you're given the different ingredients and you create the dish. That requires a whirlwind of creativity and passion, and just that certain je ne sais quoi. I don't think Jason Garrett possesses that. I think he is more of the dad who gets the hungry root box that's already has the predetermined instructions, and he says, well, turmeric seems too aggressive for us, so we're not going to put that in there. We're not going to put turmeric in the beet salad. Because that's not what we do, and we've never used turmeric, and so we're not going to start using turmeric now. I think that's really what we're seeing, is like this very milquetoast pre-2008 offense that, like, I don't know. I mean, there aren't a ton of downs where I see a lot of what you're seeing in other places, right? Whereas the routes are basically a means to an end. Other receivers are breaking other receivers open, and there's like lanes for things, and everything kind of makes sense. With Jason Garrett, it's more like, I have some guys who should be able to win. Let's line them up and let them run this, and it doesn't make much sense. Plus, trying to shove a square peg in a round hole by running Saquon Barkley when there's just no traction up front. Saquon also doesn't look quite right to me. Still, like he seems to be like running into traffic instead of like running out of traffic, which I think is kind of bizarre. And I think all of that combined makes Jason Garrett just the hungry root dad at this point.
I thought we were setting up.
I have to concede. No, Connor's food metaphor was better than mine.
It was a pretty good food metaphor. I thought we were headed towards the inspiration roll reference from a few episodes back, but we did not go there. Which
not until they sponsor us.
It was right there. It was wide open in the end zone. We didn't hit that.
Like Jason Garrett, I didn't call the right play.
Didn't call the right play. Yeah, I mean, this season was set up as this is when we will be able to know if Daniel Jones was the right pick or not. And 3 games in, we've seen some promising signs from Daniel Jones. It's ending up as being more of a referendum on the coaching staff than on the quarterback.
It's just like they're playing this style of football that is not only uncreative, but it's letting it's letting teams just hang around. It's letting bad teams hang around with them. It's letting Taylor Heineke win games against you because you give him enough chances. Yeah, eventually he's going to win the game. That's what every professional quarterback can do to you. I mean, this Falcon team is they're pretty bad. They really are quite bad. The Giants just sort of let them hang around, and then it's just a matter of it's like they're the Bizarro Chiefs or something. They're the Chiefs are trying to put teams away and can't quite do it, and the Giants are just really not interested in putting teams away. And you saw that on Sunday. You could go back to Thursday night when the 2nd and 9 run, when they decided they would play for a field goal and a stop instead of just trying to put the game away. That's just kind of what their philosophy seems to be, and they're just a little too sloppy when it's all said and done to be able to get away with doing that.
Here's the question, though. If you're Joe Judge You start 0-3. And if you're the Giants, I don't know that you get rid of him if he has a bad season this year, because you're probably also afraid of the public perception that you've become fire happy. You've been getting rid of a lot of coaches after 2 years. Mm-hmm. But what do you do? Because you're 0-3 now. It's not like there's a free agent offensive coordinator walking around here saying, hire me, but you can't stick with what you have. Are you able to? Do you have the autonomy to change? Like, I don't know where you go from here, because it's a really strange scenario. Like, I'm thinking, if I'm a coach, and I'm 0-3, and I know that this is my only chance at this, and granted, you can go back to New England and have a very long and successful career there as a special teams coach or whatever, but I'm not letting my one shot at this slip idly by when, like, it feels like the problem is very obvious. Like, the defense is playing pretty well, for the most part. The quarterback is playing pretty well for the most part. The offensive tackle that everybody said was terrible, Andrew Thomas, is actually playing pretty well for the most part. And it's like, okay, then I think there's like one problem here, but like, can you fix it? Would you fix it? And I don't know. I mean, if I'm 0-3 and I'm a head coach, continuing Jenny's psychoanalysis of everybody, I'm firing everybody. I'm blaming everybody but myself. It's not my problem. It's all you guys screwing this up,
Yeah, it's a difficult situation to be in, Connor, and it's got to be incredibly frustrating for Daniel Jones, who I'm sure has worked very hard to progress each year. He's had some aspects of his game that really need to be worked on, holding on to the football, right? And so he is showing some good things early this year, but isn't in a scheme that seems quite up to what is needed in 2021.
What if they had hired Kevin Stefanski 2 years ago? I mean, I just feel like it would just feel a lot better.
Yeah.
I think everyone would be in a better place right now.
And and then you could give Eli Manning on his jersey retirement day a win befitting of his heroic play throughout the years, and I really think that was a missed opportunity by the Giants there.
Let's go to the lightning-ish round. We got 5 games to go here, and we're going to start with the Cardinals stay 3-0. They go down to Jacksonville. Jaguars, I don't know. Boy, it's tough to figure out how to lose games like the Jaguars are doing right now. They got a 109-yard kick. What do we call that? A field goal? A missed field goal return?
Field goal return?
Yeah.
Seems right.
Yeah.
What did they call the Alabama-Auburn one?
They used to call that the kick 6, which is neat.
It's a kick 6, right?
Yeah. I guess. Yeah. No, I'm not going to give you that.
Wasn't quite as dramatic as that one, given the outcome of the game.
Yeah, true. And I'm not going to. I already gave you the food metaphor. I'm not giving you a second one on this one, Connor. But yeah, they get that, and they're up 9 points in the second half, and it just collapses. An ill-fated flea flicker that turns into a pick 6 for the Cardinals, and then it was just never close again. As all the rookie quarterbacks are struggling to varying degrees right now, but it's really a struggle there in Jacksonville.
I was waiting to see if we're going to get the weekly reference to the reps that Trevor Lawrence missed in training camp because of the faux competition with Gardner Minshew, which, in fairness to you, Gary, it's valid every week. I thought that's where you were headed with that sentence.
I wrote a line that it must have been a play that they only practiced during the 50% of the reps they gave to Gardner Minshew this summer. But it feels like too much.
The flea flicker was bad. The flea flicker was really bad. But it's almost like this is a perfect dovetail from the Joe Judge discussion, because I feel like if you're Shad Khan and you're in Jacksonville, you're almost in a similarly precarious situation, right? Where you have the future of the franchise and it's hanging in the balance, and you're kind of going down one of two paths here. And I feel like this has to be alarming, right? 0-3 with Urban Meyer has to be terrifying, and terrifying for a lot of reasons, right? Like, I thought that whether or not Vic Fangio was supposed to tell everybody what he told him after the game yesterday, where he said, wow, it's like playing Alabama every week, all these teams are really good. And you can't just, as Gary called it, sort of a Kevin Gilbride offense. Like, you can't just run that every week and pound the crap out of Bowling Green. This is not what that is anymore. And so to me, it's like the further down the road you get on this, you're like, whoa, like, do you just pull the plug? And I'm not advocating anybody get fired after 3 weeks, trust me, but like, when does that start becoming a significant thought bubble in your mind?
I just want to interject that, in fairness, the Kevin Gilbride offenses were really good for their time. True. Okay, so there was a lot of success from the Kevin Gilbride offense with the option routes, the site adjustments, all of that. So just wanted to make sure to defend that. But back to Urban Meyer, I think when you make a risky hire at head coach, the stakes are even higher when you are about to draft a generational quarterback. They went a route that generally has not been very successful. College coach to the NFL. This was a college coach who had taken some time away from the game, and they still took that gamble, even though they were about to draft Trevor Lawrence. And evidently, they believed that this was a gamble that would pay off, and that this wouldn't go the way so many other college coaches have gone in the NFL. But that was a huge risk to take, because you don't want to have the one and done coach with your prized rookie quarterback. You don't even want to have the two and done coach with the prized rookie quarterback. You want to give the rookie quarterback stability, a innovative system that he can grow in. And I think that at least we can say that 3 games in, that wherever this goes, has not been the ideal transition to the NFL for Trevor Lawrence.
Which you have to do, and it's becoming more obvious as the days are wearing on here in Jacksonville, which is something that I would have advocated, obviously, for years, is you trade for John Gruden. You bring him in, and
John Gruden knows not to talk to Vic Fangio. Just nod your head and grunt and move on.
You trade for the 3-0 coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, and you let him win that Super Bowl.
Oh, Vikings, Vikings and Seahawks. Vikings get on the board here, and look, Vikings looked really good offensively. Danielle Hunter on the defensive side of the ball continues to look really good. They have all these veteran cornerbacks. I don't know. It looks like they can assemble something. I mean, if they made a kick last week, they'd be 2-1, and things would be a little bit different as far as the outlook goes. The Seahawks defensively, though, kind of look like every problem you thought they might have had coming into the year have very much shown up the last 2 weeks after what looked like a pretty good performance in Indianapolis to start the season. It kind of looks like it's going south really quickly for Seattle.
Gary, you called this with the Seahawks defense. I thought some of the younger players that were developing, some of the players they brought in, I thought maybe we would see a return to some of the attributes that were really good with the previous era of Seahawks defenses. But so far, the results have not been good.
Kirk Cousins is 4th in the NFL in touchdown passes. Like, he's having a good season, and I think it's interesting that they, of course, get the win against Seattle and Russell Wilson, and it's obvious that just nothing this year makes any sense when they lost to the Bengals, and they're sort of pinballing through the season the way that they are, losing to the Cardinals. But I think that that's a team that could eventually sort of rise out of the rubble there and make some noise in that division, just because it doesn't seem like anybody outside of Green Bay is going to run away with it. You could get a 7th playoff spot there. But yeah, I mean, Seattle, on the other hand, is just, I think it's super disappointing when the offensive coordinator change provided that momentary spark. You thought maybe you could score enough to overcome your deficiencies on the other side of the ball, and all of a sudden you're sitting here with a 1-2 record, and where do you go from here? I feel like I've been drawing a lot of gigantic big picture conclusions here over the last few games that we've talked about, but like, really, what is this team and what are they going to become? Because they keep cycling through coordinators. They keep trying to inject some free agency lifeblood into this defense or to go for a youth movement, all these other turnover things, and they're just not replicating the success that they've had in the past. And at some point, when do you have to recognize that this is all growing a little stale?
This defense just can't get off the field. I mean, they've been on the field for 37 minutes of possession for their opponents this year is their average. Wow. And part of it is they can't get off the field. Part of it is, it's sort of you're the victim of the offense's success when Russell Wilson is hitting these long moon balls to Tyler Lockett, and that's the way it plays out. But it's just not adding up to something very good right now through 3 weeks, even after what seemed like a kind of nice season opening win there for Seattle. Out in Buffalo, the Bills, Josh Allen, there was some light hand ringing with Josh Allen. He didn't look particularly sharp against the Steelers and then against the Dolphins last week. But, I mean, he was every bit like 2020 Josh Allen here against Washington, and the Bills just completely blew away the football team out in Orchard Park. It's a weird thing, right? To put up as many points as they put up and to dominate the way that they dominated. It's like, I don't have any complaints or critiques on Josh Allen until it becomes a point where you need to complain or critique it, right? I mean, everything seems to be going fairly well, right? I mean, I don't know. I think that's how it's, and Josh Allen is always going to be that player, right? I don't think he's necessarily going to be dialed in for as long of a stretch as he was last year. Ever again in his career, but that's okay, right? Cam Newton was never as dialed in as he was during that 2015 MVP season, but he was still a very good football player. And I think that the comparisons between the two of them are still valid in that respect. Like, I think that regardless, the body type, the arm strength, all that stuff, he's still going to be a special player for a very long time for you. He's probably still going to merit the heft of that contract, but it's not necessarily ever going to look as beautiful as it did last year ever again, but that's a mixture of a lot of different things.
Yeah, and I think we saw Allen and Emmanuel Sanders connect for a lot of big plays, and that was a new acquisition, right? Took maybe the first game and a half to kind of get Sanders broken in. So I think we are just kind of seeing them work out some of the early season hiccups, and what they were today is exactly, as you said, Gary, where they left off last season.
The Colts' early season hiccups continue. I don't know what can fix this besides some sort of change at the dinner table or what have you. Right now, the Colts they're 0-3. It's been a rough early season schedule here. I guess you have to read Connor's bold predictions or listen to our last show before the season started to understand the constant beef references you'll be hearing now and for the coming weeks. But the Titans are 2-1. We've considered this division, I think rightfully so, a Titans versus Colts race, and the Titans have basically a 2.5 game lead now.
And you guys did a great episode last week on Derrick Henry and how he's able to be so consistently dominant and what makes him different from other backs. Derrick Henry continues to impress, etc.
And the Colts are spiraling to 0-5, just like we said it was going to happen at the beginning of the season before their miraculous turnaround. I was watching the Fox broadcast of one of the games, and I saw noted storyteller Tom Rinaldi on the sidelines, and I was wondering if this is kind of on his radar in terms of just, he's done some media-related stories in the past. Would that be something, when the Colts fall to 0-5, when the food poisoning incident that I predicted takes place, when the team turns it around and makes the playoffs, what is going to be our podcast role in this? We were on this from day one. We told you it was going to happen before it was even a vision in Earth. And so I think that, I have a couple ideas of how I would do a package on us for like a big pregame show thing. And so maybe I could just, if anybody knows a producer's email or anything, we could just sort of connect that way.
We'll get this thing rolling. I think that's what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
All right, last game of the week here. We had the Broncos shut out the Jets in Denver, 26-0. Look, the Broncos are 3-0. That's a really good thing to be. And the good teams beat the bad teams in the NFL, and that's what you're seeing right now with Denver. Maybe we don't know exactly how good they are. We don't know who's going to end up winning what's a very good AFC West division. But look, they got an offense that works. Their defense is dominant. Things are going well here for the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, they have had a soft early schedule, but so what? They've taken advantage of that and are off to a 3-0 start, so they should be a team that should be watched. As for the Jets, I really thoroughly enjoyed the tweets from the Jets beat writers during the game. Speaking of teams that should be watched, Brian Costello from the New York Post was like, instructing fans to turn it off, go for a walk, play with your kids, don't subject yourselves to it. Rich Cimini from ESPN had a stunning stat that the Jets were the fourth team in the Super Bowl era to not lead in their first 3 games in consecutive seasons. The only other team to do that over the last 40 years was the 2002 and 2003 Bengals. So this is a special degree of misery for Jets fans. I think Wilson has shown some flashes. Like, there are plays that are close to being made and you can see the talent that he has. So it's definitely too early to give up on him. But after what Jets fans endured last season, and then you draft a quarterback high, you have higher hopes for this year. But the reality is they just don't have the roster to compete right now.
It's pretty threadbare and it's pretty brutal. I would say, on the other hand, I do just enjoy the Broncos being atop the NFL. I like having like a 60 whatever 8-year-old Scranton man being like a Scranton area man being like a head coach. And I think there's sort of a funny, we mentioned that he had told everybody what Urban Meyer told him after the game. And like, I would envision like this very enjoyable world where he's successful, but like a lot of the older people in our lives, just honest and uncaring about what anybody else thinks of him. And maybe he becomes this wonderful little comedic drop into our lives. I don't know. That's like, maybe that's wishful thinking, but if the Broncos went 17-0 and Vic Fangio is like our lovable Italian uncle, I think that would be like a very enjoyable turn for the season. That would make me very happy.
I will stand on the table to get the cover line on the Broncos Super Bowl commemorative magazine edition, to get the cover line, Scranton area man wins Super Bowl.
But he would angrily, as he did with me, correct you, because Vic Fangio is not from Scranton. He's from Dunmore, which is right outside of Scranton.
Okay.
But his offensive line coach, Mike Munchak, is from Scranton. But Dunmore and Scranton separated only by a few streets, but perhaps in the hearts of their residents by many moons.
We've got good fact checkers. We'll make sure the area is in there. But Scranton, I think, is the headline. That's the most I can do. Yeah, it is. Zach Wilson, yeah, he occasionally makes a throw that's like, oh, right, okay, that's why I use number 2. But if you were going to redraft the quarterbacks right now, I think it is about time that we do the 2021 draft redraft. You would go Trey Lance 1, because he hasn't played very much, and then Davis Mills 2, and I don't know, the rest of Mac Jones 3, Trevor Lawrence 4, probably Justin Fields 5, Zach Wilson 6. Yeah, I mean, all we can say, to quote Bill Belichick, is that Zach Wilson is a quarterback who can make the throws. And so far he's been making some throws. Very true. All right, guys, we'll be back midweek with a show, and then we'll have week 4 for you next Monday. The MMQB Monday Morning NFL Podcast is Jenny Brentis, Connor Orr, and me, Gary Gramling. We are produced by Shelby Royston. SI's executive producer of podcasts is Scott Brody. Thanks, as always, to senior podcast producer Dan Bloom, the one man who listens to every minute of every show that we do. Mark Mravik is emeritus editor of the MMQB, and Andy Benoit is the founder of the MMQB NFL podcast. Be sure to subscribe to this feed on Apple Podcasts, and once you do, please leave a rating and review, because it really does help other people find the show, which is also available on Spotify, Stitcher, SI.com, and wherever else you listen to podcasts.